If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button, like, comment, let us know what you think about the episode. If there's a particular guest or topic that you'd like to have on the podcast, we'd love to be able to see your comments and then take those and get them on to future episodes. Today I'm going to be joined by Dan and Heather Clark from Dan's Diesel Performance. Wanted to talk with them about drop-in turbos. We're going to talk about the L5P, some new gains, some new things that they've seen with that platform, also some racing, and then how do the transmissions factor into this once we add more power. So I'm definitely looking forward to chatting with them today. Before we get to it, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors that helps make the Diesel podcast possible. Kershaw Knives has a 40% off MSRP code for you. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code 25TDP40, get you 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear. If you're in the market for a new knife for hunting, fishing, EDC, something around the job site, around the house, they've got you covered with a bunch of different options for blade steel, blade shape, different opening mechanisms, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget. So if you're in the market, head on over to their website and use code 25TDP40 for 40% off MSRP. All right, let's get to today's podcast with Dan and Heather Clark from Dan's Diesel Performance, talking about drop-in turbos, transmissions, racing, and specifically the L5P and some new gains that they've seen with it. Dan and Heather, welcome to Diesel Podcast. How you guys doing?
Oh, pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Feels like 2024 flew by really, really fast, and we're already in 2025. And I know before we know it, it's going to be springtime. People, getting their trucks ready for towing, hauling, vacation time, everything like that. I thought it'd be really cool to kind of catch up on some things last year that you guys did. I know there's some sled pulling accomplishments, some really cool things to talk about, and then also some products that I think most of it will kind of revolve around Duramaxes, but a lot of it applies to other type of trucks. And then I got a listener question to throw out to you guys, so I'm looking forward to chatting today.
Cool.
Likewise.
Well, Dan, you had mentioned to me some sled pulling that you and Heather did last year, and I wanted to see how things kind of went and just see with products that you had on the truck, getting those things ready, what you guys did last year.
Well, it all kind of started out, we'd thrown a new charger on my truck, and we were like, hey, let's just take it to the first pull of the year. We'll see how it does. We'll kind of base our season from there. So we went up to the other side of the state and we made our first pass of the season with my truck, and I ended up winning. And I just looked at him and I'm like, well, our summer just got a whole lot busier. If we would have stacked maybe mid pack, I don't know if it would have turned out the same if we would have followed the club all summer. And that kind of started from there.
I got my '05 LOI truck that, just threw some basic parts on there and pulled it same event that she was at and took fifth. So we decided to pull both trucks with that club all season. And that's Southwest Wisconsin truck pullers.
What kind of truck do you have, Heather?
I have a 02 LB7 with a ZF6 in it.
Okay, and then what class were you guys racing in?
Work stock diesel.
Okay, that's a popular one. A lot of listeners, when they're like, "Hey, I want to get into sled pulling," they kind of hone in on that one for I think a bunch of different reasons. But for you guys, like, is that what made you gravitate towards that one for 2024? And maybe historically, is it something where it's relatable to a lot of potential customers you may get, or is it the most fun? Or
there's kind of multiple reasons. One, my truck's always kind of been a work stock truck, so for me, that was a good class for the way my truck is set up. Two, majority of the products that we are building and using kind of gravitate to work stock or street diesel related classes. So it's easiest for us when we're doing R&D to be somewhere where our customer base is also going to be competing. So we're testing these products and we have real feedback that will apply to them. Also, from the outside looking in, that's going to be like the easiest class for most of our customers to be able to join into. So by us taking these products, testing them, we can tell them that like, hey, if you use this, you can jump into this work stock class and be very competitive.
Yeah, and a lot of the things that we learn by testing those larger products also, go down to the smaller models as well. So we make changes to like the turbine or vanes or compressor, whatever, on the turbos that we're pushing in work stock, we do apply those changes or improvements to some of the smaller models. So it helps us improve all of our products across the board.
As far as work stock, it's probably the most prevalent class in the area because multiple clubs all run a very similar class. So it's easy to go anywhere within the state or even parts in Illinois or Iowa, and you can go compete in that club as well.
I think it's really interesting. I want to spend a little time on this subject is being able to test products in a competitive environment. And then as you had mentioned, Dan, them trickling down to maybe it's not even a truck that's sled pulling or drag racing. It's something that's towing or a daily driver and the things that you guys can learn. What were some bigger lessons or a handful of them that you guys learned in 2024 in a competitive environment that ended up being able to improve something that somebody who's just towing every day and daily driving, but needs a little bit more performance could take advantage of?
The VGT needs
Yeah,
some love.
the VGT line. So over the course of the summer, we were developing a 72 millimeter drop in, and we learned a lot, like what the turbocharger can do and what it can't do, where the breaking point is. We were working with one turbine, and it was a 80 by 72 9-blade, and we learned that like the turbocharger ran really good in that 45 to 50 pound range, and we were happy with the way it was pulling. And then we decided to continue to push it further. We were making 65 pounds of boost on this drop-in turbo, and that's when we started seeing issues with the turbine coming apart. And we've always thought, like with the turbines, if you saw the inducer blades, they looked like they were melting, and we thought that was just from high EGTs. Well, we looked back at like the recordings, and we were seeing the EGTs were only like 1600 degrees, but it was making 65 pounds of boost. So it didn't really make a lot of sense why the turbine would be melting at that point. So we went forward with some new designs and different materials, and we were still seeing the same effect. Not as bad, but we were still seeing some damage after a hard pull like that, even getting into like the 1800 degree range. So then started thinking, well, maybe it's not just EGTs that are causing this issue. Maybe it's centrifugal force and like, from shaft speed and stuff. So we started doing the calculations to figure out like how much shaft speed do we need, or how much compressor speed do we need to get 65 pounds of boost. And it turns out we were overspeeding the turbocharger. So we backed the turbo back down to 45, 50 pounds, and the truck actually made more horsepower and never had any problems after that with the turbine damaging. So with taking that knowledge, it's like, okay, when we see that same issue in like a 66 or a 64, it's not necessarily just EGTs that are the problem. It's guys pushing these turbos beyond what they were designed to do, spinning them really fast. Maybe they've got a dirty air filter or an intake elbow or something that's restrictive, and it's just causing the turbocharger to spin too fast, and that centrifugal force is what's ripping them apart. It's actually called creeping, is what the technical term is. So we learned a lot over the summer, and we're making changes to our turbine designs and vane package and stuff like that to make the product handle more abuse.
Well, on your truck, did you have the filter on yours for every hook, or was yours open?
It was a combination. I ran some pulls with no filter, some with. Didn't really see much of a horsepower difference either or. But we are on some dusty tracks, so it's a good idea to run a filter. Otherwise, you dust the wheel, and the compressor starts to lose its efficiency as the gap between the blades and the bore increases. So
that would be a situation where I think, and we've talked about this on other podcasts before, where maybe they buy a turbo or they go into it thinking, well, I'm going to go with this size because maybe it's, a couple $100 less, but I'm going to they know they're going to push it. They're going to throw more fuel at it, or the tuning is going to be more aggressive. And it's something where you can, in designing a turbo, see it on the track and kind of step back and say, okay, let's look at the whole lineup now and say, how can we design this, change materials so that I'm not sure how common that is with customers you may have, but be able to say, hey, maybe we can encompass a little bit more power in this range, or direct somebody into a specific turbo size where they're not going to face like that issue that you did on the track. And I know you've talked before about how important it is when somebody is selecting a turbo and they're talking with you guys to clearly define where they want to be, how they're going to be using it, exactly what their plans are in the future for fueling and tuning, so that they have the right turbo for that specific setup.
Mm. Yeah, I guess there's a common misconception that people think just by bolting a bigger turbocharger on, they're going to pick up a lot of horsepower, and that's not true. If the truck is tuned correctly and you've got stock injectors, bolting a bigger turbocharger on is not going to gain you much horsepower. But they'll bolt this turbocharger on and they'll tell their tuner, yeah, I put this turbo on, send me a kill tune. So they give it all the pulse width, a lot of aim position. So you've got a lot of EGTs, a lot of drive pressure. It's just a recipe for failure. Now you get something hot enough and spin it fast enough, it's going to fail. And I would say that is the majority of warranty claims that we see are guys damaging the turbine just from pushing it beyond what it was intended to do.
A good example would be the one stereo where the guy had purchased a 68, decided to tow campers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it says right on our website, the 68 is, for competition or hot street driving, just, not recommended for towing. The guy has a dually with 37 or 35-inch tires towing a camper in the mountains. So, and blames us for his problems. Like,
I think
so.
Well, that's a good point that you bring up too, with, I think, drivability and where someone is going to spend probably 99% of their time, and where the throttle position is going to be and how much power the truck is actually making.
Yeah.
And yeah, you might have this larger turbo, but what is your drivability like, and how it changes the response? Can you talk about that a little bit as far as turbo size? And I know a lot goes into it, not just with compressor, but turbine wheel, turbine housing, all those sorts of things, and being able to pick up drivability and power and performance at different RPMs based on what the use of the truck is.
As far as drivability and performance, I would go with a VGT any day of the week over a conventional turbocharger. You build a drop-in VGT, it can be any size, 66 or 68, whatever. And with the ECM controlling vane position, you can make that big turbocharger respond down low like a small turbo. And then as your RPM comes up, open up the vanes so it can breathe and make more power. But the size of the turbocharger is going to depend on what you're going to do with the truck. So if you're just daily driving, towing a lot, maybe you want to do a few road pulls or drag race, whatever, just play around a little bit. 650 horsepower to 700 horse, like a 64 millimeter stage 2 will be perfectly fine for that.
And 90% of our customer base, 64 is all they need.
Yeah. But, if you want to get the most performance out of that turbocharger, you need to upgrade your fuel injectors. You have to have a certain amount of MM3 to meet the power goal that you're after. And you got to get all that MM3 into the piston bowl within a certain duration of time. Just putting a bigger pulse width in, holding the injector open longer is the wrong way to go about that. We're recommending like 100% over injectors for most trucks that are running like a 64 to the max or 66, something like that. LMLs can get by with a little bit smaller injector. The Piezos, they respond pretty quickly. So L5Ps, same thing. Those trucks really need bigger injectors, especially if you're going for north of 600 horsepower. Guys done 700 plus on stock injectors, but the total injection event, to do that is like a 3,000 microsecond command. but with the latency of the injector on the back end, it ends up being like over 4,000 microseconds. So you're spraying fuel way down the cylinder, chasing that piston down. So
As far as the relationship between those two, I think this will probably lead into the fuel system as well, not just even the injectors, maybe a bit of like the CP3 or CP4 or a combination of different options that are out there. At what, and this is kind of a general question, and I'm sure it'll get really specific based on power level, but at what point would I need to start thinking about I need more than a turbo for either a power level or a drivability standpoint, or just the longevity of hard parts? You'd mentioned the piston and the engine. When do I need to start thinking about upgrading my injection pump injectors to be able to support, say, a given power level? Maybe it's 550, maybe it's 600, maybe it's a little bit over. But what's sort of a general recipe? And we could stick with Duramax trucks for that.
Yeah, we specialize in mostly Duramax. We do some stuff for Cummins and Power Strokes too. But if we're looking at the Duramax group, I would say if you want to go past that 500 horsepower mark reliably, you need to upgrade both the turbocharger and the injectors together. It takes two elements to make power. That's fuel and air. You can't just add one and expect to gain a lot. As far as a CP3 goes, or a CP4, like every LML should get a CP3 conversion, regardless of it's not a very reliable pump, and the output is lower than what a stock CP3 would be. So on the older trucks, I would say I think it's around that 575, 600 horsepower mark is when the stock CP3 is about tapped out. So those are the horsepower levels where you need to start upgrading things at.
I'm glad you brought up the CP3 conversion on LMLs. I've been wanting to talk about them for a long time. I think in the limited knowledge that I have, if I had one of those trucks, that would probably be one of the first things, if not the first thing, that I would do. What's involved for somebody who's heard about it? They're not very familiar. They know about CP4 problems. It's been talked about for years and years and years. And maybe they're not looking for horsepower. Maybe they're just looking for reliability. What goes into converting a CP4 to a CP3 on an LML?
Well, there's a kit. We put a kit together that has all the lines and fittings and the adapter flange to allow you to bolt a CP3 pump into the valley of a LML. We have a very good kit for that. I guess the most common kit is guys that are already non-compliant, and that's pretty straightforward install. Guys that are still running emissions, they can't run just a regular CP3 pump. They have to run a special pump that supplies fuel for that ninth injector. Some companies have tried using the return flow from the injectors to supply that ninth injector, and the output is just not enough to do that, especially sitting there at idle. Your return line pressure drops too low. So you have to have a special port on the CP3 pump to supply that fuel. So that's what one of our kit is, or has, is a port machined into the pump to supply that return fuel. So we build a few different models of CP3s here. We got our compliant kit, which has that port for the ninth injector. And then we have our D8, which is a sportsman equivalent. That's good for about 650 horsepower stock displacement. And we have our 10 mil stroker and 12 mil stroker. And then I've got a 14 mil stroker sitting underneath my bench right now that we're getting to test. So pretty cool stuff coming out.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting what you mentioned about the compliant kits. And from just my limited knowledge, I thought, okay, there's just some hardware I need. Maybe fuel lines come in the kit, but I could just take any CP3 for a Duramax and just run it on my LML. But I think that's a really good point that you made about how in those compliant kits, it needs to accommodate that ninth injector and being able to take care of that in the kit, so that if you're just looking for a reliability standpoint, you don't want to deal with CP4 failures, and maybe you're not extremely confident in some of the kits or the products that are out there to prevent if you do have wear on the CP4, prevent middle shavings or anything like that. You just want to get away from it, go to a CP3. You guys have that accommodated in the kit to be able to supply fuel to that ninth injector.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of kits out there. There's some really good kits out there, and there's a lot of Chinese knockoff kits. And those are the ones you got to stay away from because you will have leaks. The high pressure line, I've seen a lot of those crack and leak, and it leaves you stranded on the side of the road. And at the end of the day, you might have only saved $100 or so by going with that cheaper option. So, no, we've got a really good kit that we've been putting together for many years, and we've had really good luck with it. So,
with the compliant kit, if somebody gets it for their LML, do they need any tuning with it? Is there anything on the electronic side they need to think about to be able to run the CP3?
No, our compliant kit is straight drop in. Pump fuel curve matches the CP4 output. So the ECM doesn't know any different. It thinks it's a CP4 still. It responds the same. It doesn't surge. I know there's some compliant kits out there that have issues with surging, but ours doesn't. So no, it's pretty straightforward.
You guys you took care of everything, so it's an easy install.
Yeah, and the lines, like for the feed line, it's all factory quality. So you can still utilize the factory underhood fuel filter if you want, or you can go straight to the CP3 if you do have a FAS or an air dog or something like that on there.
Okay. All right, cool. Now with the quality, I want to spend a little bit of time on that because it's something that I find comes up with listener questions, or I see conversations where people are comparing products, and it's usually like a name brand to something I've never heard of. So it might be something that comes from overseas. And I think of a high pressure fuel system, the word that sticks out to me, or the phrase, is high pressure, and fuel being under that pressure, and the quality of the materials, the fuel lines, the fittings, all those sorts of things are incredibly important to longevity. And I want to ask you about the kit you guys do and focus on the quality control and the materials that you selected. So somebody's listening to this, they jump on your website, they're browsing around, they'll know the time, the effort, the design, the testing that you put into even the smallest of parts or components that is in something like the CP3 conversion kit. How do you guys, or how much and in what ways do you guys focus on quality of materials in designing this?
Yeah, we use the best quality materials available. We make our own CP3 mounting flanges in-house, 6061 aluminum. All the fittings are stainless steel, stainless clamps. Line is stainless steel as well. So it's all high quality stuff. Some of the hoses are OEM hoses or dedicated fuel hoses as well. So they're not going to break down and deteriorate.
As far as like pump stuff, that's all tested in-house before it ever leaves. A lot of those parts are installed on personal vehicles or customers that are local to us. So we're having actual road testing done, not just put on a test bench and okay, this is good to go out the door. We actually need it in customer trucks. They're going to be getting fuel different places, run through these products, make sure everything's verified before it ever makes it to the actual market.
Yeah, the pumps are built out of brand new Bosch LBZ pumps. So high quality. And the same thing goes for the Cummins. We do Cummins pumps as well, from stock displacement all the way up to 12 mil and soon 14 mil. Reverse rotation pumps also. It's all built from brand new Bosch pumps.
What with the 14 millimeter pump, that gets me interested because I love performance, and it's been really cool for me personally to see the growth of what CP3s can do from like when I first got into diesel trucks to now, 14 millimeter, and just where that's going. What sort of power levels and applications would one of those apply to?
Like 14 mil is probably going to be for the guys that are going over 1,000 horsepower and want to do it on a single pump. 12 millimeter can get you pretty close. On a Duramax, it will support over 1,000 on a Cummins, but Yeah, if you want to go even further than that on a single pump, it needs to be a 14 mil.
If somebody asked you if they're building a truck like that and they say, should I go with a single 14 millimeter pump or a dual CP3 or twin CP3 setup, what would be the benefit or drawbacks of just as they approach that question, which direction would be better for me or what should I think about in either one of those setups?
It really just depends on how much fuel you need. If you're going above that 1,000 horse mark, um, then you're going to be looking at either a 14 mil or a twin CP3 setup. The nice thing about a single is it's just one pump, so there's a lot less moving parts. A little easier to tune in most cases because you're only controlling one regulator versus two. Um, Especially, if you have two pumps that are different sizes, they have different fuel curves, so that can be tricky to tune. So it's just nice to be able to work with one.
I like the simplicity standpoint, and just less hardware, less fuel lines, less fittings, less everything. I would probably lean more myself towards a single setup just for, I think, simplicity.
Yeah.
And
One way to look at it would be like if you're doing, twin pumps, a lot of times that can be a more cost-effective avenue, doing like a dual CP3 conversion.
Sometimes.
Yeah, in some applications. Like now, if you're putting like 212 mils or something on, yeah, you're already, spending a decent amount at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. I mean, you already have a pump in the valley. If you can find a good used LBZ pump floating around on marketplace, all you gotta do is just get the pulley and bracket, the kit, and you can have a fairly cheap option to get enough fuel for over 1,000. But the cleanliness, it's nice to have a single pump. You don't have to worry about the belt flying off or shredding. It's just the way to go in a lot of cases.
Speaking from experience.
Yes, I've tossed the belt a lot on the dyno. Also sizing the pump for your horsepower goals. If a guy is only looking to make 650 horsepower, he doesn't need a 14 mil pump. You're going to sacrifice a little bit of drivability because there's the fuel curve of that FCA is pretty tricky or touchy, I suppose. So pick your horsepower goal and then size the pump and injectors according to that. Or maybe just go up to the next size up, like maybe like we sell a lot of 10 mil strokers for guys that are in that 600 to 750 horsepower range. If you want to go from 750 up to 9 something, 12 mil is good for that.
Common question we get from you guys a lot is, hey, I need a diesel engine. I either, I can't wait this long to get one, or normal place I get stuff from it just takes too long, or they don't have the parts in it that I need. Maybe my truck's not stock or I tow heavy with it. I don't want to go back with just a stock engine. DFC Diesel is a sponsor of the podcast. We worked with them, hand in hand on doing episodes, answering technical questions. They have a complete lineup of Cummins, Duramax, and Power Stroke remanufactured engines that are set to a standard of ISO 9001 2015 standards, which is a huge deal in the aftermarket. And there's certain levels of quality testing, validation that are required for that. So when you get one of those engines, the type of quality that's built behind it with an industry-leading warranty that's really comprehensive. And the other thing with that is sometimes the options that are out there, it's a basic OEM engine. You want a little bit more. You don't want to have the same failure again. So there's a bunch of different series of engines that they have from core, street, tow haul, and also the Speed of Air series, which we've covered on the podcast before. There's a lot of really cool benefits to it. And if you have questions about that, reach out to them. If you don't know the type of engine that you're looking for, if you go to dfcdiesel.com, there's a ton of info there. You can send an email or you can reach out to them. Also, they're working with Speed of Air pistons, which it's the only piston that pays for itself. And there's a lot of really cool technology behind it. So you can add that into your build and be able to get better fuel economy, increase power, increase torque, and better engine life out of it. Some of the most common engine applications or series of engines that they have with that lead time. A lot of them are in stock or they have really short lead times. So you can check your favorite retailer or go to dfcdiesel.com, check them out, see what's in stock, see what you can get. If you have questions, maybe you want to do something that's outside of the normal series of engines, they have tons of choices for rods, cranks, pistons, valve train upgrades, tons of different things. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure and head on over and check them out. I wanted to transition a little bit to the L5P. You'd mentioned drop-in turbo for them, and I wanted to chat with you about that engine because I'm starting to hear more from the aftermarket pertaining to that engine. So I think, a lot of them now are starting to come out of warranty. People are starting to do stuff to them. Yep. Maybe the second owner's looking to do stuff to them. And I've been kind of chomping at the bit for years, and I had to wait because I know there's that cycle of, they got to come out of warranty first before people are going to do stuff to them. Mm-hmm. How excited are you for that engine? And then what sort of products, with the turbo, maybe other things, are you guys looking at being able to offer to give people build options with the L5P?
Mm-hmm. I will say that the L5P platform has been really impressive. When we take like our 64 mil, we built a stage 2 turbocharger and we put that on a truck. On the L5P, this truck had 50% over injectors and we dynoed it at like 753 horsepower, uncorrected. And we were taken a little off guard on that because on the older trucks, we would typically see like 650, 675 on a 64 stage 2. So, we're unsure as to why it was doing that, but you've got cylinder heads that flow way better up front. You got bigger intercooler, better wide bridge setup, intake manifold runners. The turbocharger design is better than the Garrett version. So there's a lot of other things that go into it. So like the L5P is a very efficient and just a beast of a motor. So it's very impressive. The injectors they're Denso injectors. Colton doesn't like them. I think they're a very nice injector, very simple. The problem is they did not design them with a lot of overhead. So you don't really see really big size of L5P injectors. I think like 150% to 200% is about as big as you might see on those. So now we got to start going down different avenues to get more fuel into that motor.
And I think these L5Ps are going to be really good work stock contenders too. They're going to be able to put a smaller charger on smaller injectors and be highly competitive compared to, say, like my LB7, where I'm going to need a lot more fuel and a much bigger charger to be at an equal horsepower competitive level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got one customer that's got a 18 L5P with 100% overs and a 12 mil CP3 in our 66 stage 2, and we downed his truck at like 830 horsepower. We backed it back down a little bit, but it's just shows that how impressive that platform is with literally the same air that the smaller or the older platforms had. So really looking forward to pushing drop-in turbo stuff on that platform, building bigger injectors. We're working on a CP3 conversion kit for those, so hope to launch that this year.
In that kind of that 700 to 850 horsepower range, how well does the engine hold up? Like connecting rods, other components like that, compared to like LBZs and LLYs and LB7. So maybe somebody that has an older Duramax, they're looking to get something newer. They want the newer technology, but they also have that kind of horsepower inclination, like to go fast sort of aspect. And they're thinking, okay, well, do I need to jump into an engine build kind of quick? Am I going to start bending rods? How does that side hold up?
I think anything's going to hold up better than an 05 LOI.
My LOI bent some rods over the summer, so apparently that's what happens when you push over 60 pounds of boost on stock rods and pull it down in the 2000 RPM range. But the L5P rods are really stout. We've got one customer that's making 1,100 horsepower on our compound kit with 100 over injectors. It's got stock wrap.
Let's say you get to 1,000, you're going to need rods. Like you might not need them in these trucks. No one's really had a consistent, say, 1,200 horsepower L5P out there running multiple seasons with that data to come back yet to utilize.
Yep. GM improved the piston design between the LML and the L5P. So they took some of that lip away on the crown. So I haven't seen much for L5P pistons cracking. The crankshafts are stronger. I have seen a couple of them break, but definitely nowhere near the number that LMLs had. Yeah, they're just a really good setup. Head gaskets, we have seen head gasket failures on the L5P. Guys pushing a lot of horsepower, drive pressure, stuff like that. But
yeah, we have a 2017 in the shop now that we're using for some test stuff. I think that one might end up being a big number truck and see if that bottom end sticks together.
Yeah, that one had a glow plug tip break off, which that actually is becoming a fairly common issue on the L5Ps. They have a very delicate glow plug. So
is that glow plug issue? Is it something that can just happen randomly? Is it more over higher mileage time? Is it just completely random when that happens?
It seems to be random, or if a guy replaces the glow plug and mishandles it, you could hold the glow plug, 6 inches off a table and drop it and probably break the tip. But the thing is that the tip doesn't break on the outside; it breaks inside the body. So you screw that into the cylinder head, and then the tip works its way out and boop into the cylinder and trashes the piston in the head. So if you're putting new glow plugs in an L5P, I always recommend just take a clean paper towel and grab onto the tip and give it a tug. And as long as it doesn't pull out, it's good to put it in the hole.
It's exciting to see the aftermarket on these L5Ps, and it seems like a huge. Well, there's just a lot of benefits to somebody who is looking for a little bit more performance, or maybe a lot more performance from the power numbers you were talking about. That it would be a great Duramax engine to get, and that kind of leads into the question a listener had asked me, and he asked it very generally, so we can make it about L5Ps or any Duramax or any truck really. But he had messaged in over Christmas, and he said, "Hey, can you ask this question to a guest when they're on the podcast? When you're looking at a transmission for your truck, and I assume, and I think this is kind of the power range where it's not a big horsepower truck. It's not even a street truck. It's something probably close to 400, maybe 450 horsepower, kind of in that range. I have a transmission failure on my stock transmission. Should I just go right back to a GM dealer, Ford dealer, Ram dealer, and just get an OEM unit? Or does the aftermarket offer me above and beyond in a way that I should definitely go that direction, whether it's with materials, build quality, upgraded converter, maybe addressing some of the stock issues? I think that's where a lot of people can kind of get stuck is, do I use the convenience of the local dealership and an OEM transmission, or should I start to look out there to say, what's in the aftermarket and is it better? So what would you say if you were to compare the two for somebody in that relatively stock range? They tow, they daily drive, maybe they're going to put a ton of mileage on it when they're looking for a transmission solution.
I would say it's going to be kind of down the middle and personal preference. I mean, at that point, if you're not planning on adding any additional power, like OEM, GM would be perfectly fine. But at the same time, price-wise, it's going to be similar to aftermarket. So, I mean, aftermarket, you might be able to kind of pick and choose some additional features you may want added in there. So I think it's going to come down to what they want more, though, so than what they need in that application.
I think stock components are good for stock horsepower and torque. Generally, I kind of give it like a 30% rule that transmission should handle 30% more horsepower than it came from the factory. So if you use those numbers, when you get up into, let's say it's an LOI or LB7 or something, if you get up into that 450 horsepower range, yeah, you're probably right on the edge of what that transmission can handle. When you get into the 6-speed stuff, around that 500 horsepower range is probably when you need to consider upgrading the transmission. But, even if you're just putting a transmission in a bone stock truck, a lot of times price wise, the dealership is about the same, if not more, than an aftermarket unit. I will say in the aftermarket transmissions, the ones that are built up, we're going to address some of the shortcomings of those factory units. So whereas it's clutch material or clutch count, hydraulic pressures, valve springs, all that good stuff. So it's going to be a much more reliable transmission for stock all the way through higher horsepower.
One of the things that really jumps out to me, I'd say as a truck owner, if I was in that situation and looking between both options, is I think of an OEM unit and I think of mass production and I think of them being very price conscious and saying, can we get by with this stamp material? Can we get by with this clutch material? Do we have to use the best steels? Do we have to use the best whatever it might be? Whereas I think, and you guys build transmissions, if I needed something for that power level, it's hands-on with someone, and you've spent years and years and years testing different clutch materials, testing different steels, the tolerances that are in it, the different converter options that are out there. In my mind, that's what would jump out to me. I guess it'd be a more personalized experience, and it would be something where I could lean on your experience. You've probably built thousands of transmissions and, all that sort of thing, versus the guy at the parts counter at GM is looking up the part number and I'm getting something that's kind of mass produced for just the typical stock way somebody would use that truck. And that would really kind of drive my purchasing decision, is the more personalized experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say another thing to look at would be convenience. So say you're buying our transmission or any other company's transmission. Do they have dealers in your area where it's easy for you to drive there for an install, getting a trans flush, all that kind of stuff? Or is your dealership going to be close enough? So if you do need that, help with something, is it going to be easier for you to go there? Or if we have a dealer in the area, are you going to get that service you need going there? Or do you want to make a long drive to come out to us? Not everyone has time to just be able to drop something, maybe drive 8 hours to come see us. Whereas if their dealership's 5 minutes away, you got to factor that into the equation as well.
And warranty.
Yep.
A lot of times, factory warranty is only like 2 years or something like that. And if you have any modifications done to your engine at all to make more horsepower, they can use that as a loophole to get out of warranty in the transmission. Whereas if transmission's built to handle that, and then it has a problem, well, we're looking to find out what happened and hopefully take care of it. So,
well, being that we're talking about L5Ps and that I have you guys on the podcast, I also thought of another question to ask you, and that's about the 10-speed Allison. What is your opinion on it? Because you got me excited about L5Ps with the power level and the turbo I can run and how much more power they can get with less air and less fuel. Is that a transmission that you think in the future, are there going to be build options for it? Does it hold up to a little bit more power, a lot more power? What do you think about the 10 speeds?
I love the 10 speeds as far as just driving the truck. We bought a 23 dually to tow our whole trucks around, and that thing just has plenty of power. It shifts awesome. Those small gear ratio jumps just make it a much better driving experience. As far as handling horsepower, they seem to be doing pretty decent for what they are. And I do think a lot of that has to do with those small gear ratio jumps. Keeps the engine in the power band, and it's not seeing those huge torque spikes from one gear to the next gear. Parts are starting to come out for them. I've seen some clutches, some hard parts, drums and stuff like that, some hydraulic parts. So, and tuning, that's available now to tune the TCM. So I think the 10 speed, over the next couple of years is going to be a very solid platform.
That's exciting because I think with the engine part, and you talked about it, in depth with just the potential that's there if you want something that makes actually some really good power numbers. And then that conversation always goes back to, well, what about my transmission? So I know on an LB7, I know on an LBZ, I know on a LMM, I'm going to have to jump into that kind of quick. And the 10 speed is almost, it's so new because we're seeing these power numbers from the engine. Then people start to say, okay, well, are there parts? Can it be built? What should I expect there? And so I think that's exciting to hear that there's different parts, different options. I'm sure you guys will be right in the middle of it with, development, testing it, like we talked about, in the very beginning. So that's really cool. I wanted to look a bit into the future with 2025, and then we can talk about sled pulling. We can talk about maybe some new products and things you guys are looking at. What are you looking forward to this year?
Well, continue to raise the bar and be more competitive, push our products more.
I'm just looking forward to keep beating him.
Hopefully close the gap a little bit. So
I will say he did get to win one over the summer because
I twice actually, but neither one was the truck running its full potential.
What was the other one?
So there was the first, the pull and basketball. That one fell underneath the turbocharger. The second one was when the sled operator pulled your kill switch.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, which he made the right call. She was booking it pretty quick towards the brick wall. So, yeah, I guess he made the right decision to do that. But we were trying to get our class done before the rain started coming, and we got in the truck just as it started raining to pull out of the pits. So it wasn't the situation where they could re-weigh the sled and then start the class over again. So
yeah, I mean, for 25, I just hope like mine still runs like good consistently, like it did a majority of the season. I mean, early in the year, we'd rerouted the intake like after the first two pulls and the truck wasn't running right. So we were trying a couple little things there, but driveline wise, truck held up really good. So I'd like to see that level, going into this season, not having to do we didn't really have many repairs this year, which is a first for my truck.
Yeah, just one ring and pinion and shore the alignment pin off on one of the leaf spring perches. So the rear axle is starting to twist a little bit.
I don't know why that would have happened.
Otherwise, that truck was pretty maintenance free for the whole season. Mine buckled a connecting rod and shortened the other 7. So we had to swap a whole engine in it.
Couple turbochargers.
A few turbocharger swaps, R&D stuff. What else is?
Can't really think of anything else. Yours.
Yeah.
I mean, yours was pretty consistent aside from that.
Yeah.
Just staying ahead of maintenance on yours as well.
Yeah. I mean, this year for mine, I think it's going to be focusing on making it a little bit more reliable, doing either a budget build or a build of some sort on the engine, make that a more solid platform. Continue working on new turbo stuff and put bigger injectors in it. And probably test that 14 mil CP3 in it as well. Make it a little bit more competitive.
That budget build would be cool. I'd love to chat with you about that if that's something that you do. I think a lot of people look towards, they want advice and they want to hear from somebody experienced to know, where should I invest the money? Where can I pull back a little bit? Where do I not need to, maybe allocate funds towards this to have this really solid platform? That would be really cool to take a detailed look at building an engine, a setup, turbos, fueling, and get your experience where we should invest the money.
Yeah, that's what her truck's got is one of our budget builds. And it's just cast D-lip pistons, set of our sportsman rods, Kelly's crank, girdle, billet mains, and that motor's got over 3 seasons on it now. Had a few nitrous hits above 1100 horsepower, but for the last couple seasons, it's been running in that 900 horsepower range. We downed it at the end of the season at 987 horsepower uncorrected with a slipping clutch on the dyno. So we couldn't really get the true torque number out of it, but horsepower was accurate, I suppose.
3 seasons. That's a good run.
Yeah. Yeah, that clutch had 2 years on it, so it didn't notice anything. And Dan over at Blair, he got us taken care of real quick. So,
yeah, that truck definitely got work this summer. Like I said, we'd only planned on following one sanction, and the other group, they had a pull that didn't interfere. So that's when we ran up there, like I said earlier, and see how the truck did. And that's when, we're like, all right, I guess we'll try to follow 2 clubs. And we managed to pull that off. And I ended up winning championship in both of them. And he was runner up in both clubs.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of driving this summer. We got about 4 pulls in. And then finally we're like, this 2 trucks, 2 trailers thing, this kind of sucks. Because a lot of these pulls on the other side of the state are about 2.5 to 3 hour drives in one direction. So when you got a bigger gooseneck trailer and then picked up a dually, so then it helped a little bit travel wise.
Yeah, each truck. I mean, I was driving the 2020 and she was driving her 22 L5Ps, and they were both getting 7 to 8 miles per gallon pulling one truck and trailer. This 23 dually is getting 8 to 9 pulling a 40-foot with 2 trucks behind it. So yeah, it's quieter because stock tires and rides nice. So yeah, very nice.
And then we finished out the season. I think I went 6 or 7 pulls in a row, undefeated there to wrap up the season.
Yeah, that was with Southwest Wisconsin Pullers, and the other club we pull with is Midwest Tractor and Truck Pullers. So did very well at both clubs.
When's the first pull this year?
First Saturday in June, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Leaf River, and then run up to Soldiers Grove, Wisconsin. So we got about a 3.5 hour drive between the 2 events. So we just got to hope the first one goes good and then run up to the other one.
Yeah, we were fortunate this year that there was only one pull that overlapped with another one on the same day. And
because the one event was a rescheduled date, because prior to that, there was no overlap until that.
Yeah, so we pulled in Beaver Dam at 4 o'clock. We were the first class, and then we loaded up quick and then headed all the way over to Elroy, Wisconsin, and pulled there. So that was exciting. You're just crossing your fingers, hoping nothing breaks, because then it kind of screws you for the second hook. So.
Yeah, because the one in Elroy was the final points hook for the year with Southwest. So pretty much all I needed to do was just bump the sled. So like say I had broke at the prior event, I just needed to show up and at least try to move the sled and I would have been fine for points. But I'm usually not content with, doing it half-ass.
Yeah. Me on the other hand, the run for second points was a pretty tight race. We had a few good running trucks that were in that, top 5. So I definitely had to put on a good show.
Yeah, if he would have done anything less than top 5, there's a chance he could have been knocked out of the second place spot. So
I took 3rd that night. So
yeah,
exciting. I'll definitely be curious to see this year. Maybe Dan's able to win a few more and maybe take first place, or maybe he's still gonna be chasing you out there.
She wants me to jump up a class, pull like outlaw.
Like we used to. You were in your own class. I was in my own class. We're both happy.
Like, to be fair, your truck's been pulling work stock a lot longer than mine has. So
yeah,
in reality, you should jump up.
No, it's fine. Consistent there. You've already been in a bigger class, so that's where
with
you
a different truck.
You can build that one again.
Build the mistress again, I suppose.
It's really cool to catch up with you guys, and I love the talk about the L5P's turbo technology, things like that, and a lot of times after podcasts, we'll get questions about it, and I don't know the answers. I'm just enjoying the conversation and asking questions I know the listeners want. What is the best way for people to be able to connect with you, ask questions about what we talked about, or maybe something completely different? Is it to go to dansdieselperformance.com? Is it to call in, email? I know you guys are all over social media. I love your guys' social media, by the way. I always get a good laugh or good information from the things that you guys do. So I do encourage people to follow you. But what's the best way to reach out and connect with Dan's Diesel Performance?
Probably social media,
Yeah.
Facebook or Instagram are the two best as far as messaging or calling in and talking to any of the guys.
Yeah. You can also send me an email to info@dansdieselperformance.com. I'm the one that reads and responds to those. Just message us on Facebook
or if you see us in person. And we do have a dyno day potentially in the works. We're just working on solidifying a date for that.
Mhm.
So if you see any of us free, like at an event like that, you can always come up, talk to us for a little bit. We'd be happy to chat with you.
Yeah.
Cool. I always love chatting with you guys. Look forward to getting some more listener questions for you and talking about turbos, injectors, really anything, pertaining to diesel trucks. So I appreciate your guys' time today. The information, knowledge helped me learn a lot about trucks and about the L5P, and maybe I'm in the market soon. And all the new trucks are so close with specifications and power and everything like that. It's really cool to talk with like people that are in the industry that are pushing them in different ways that maybe never I will, but I can take the knowledge and the experience you have to say, maybe one day I do want to do something to this truck. And I remember Dan and Heather were talking to me about, the power or the options with, X, Y, and Z. So it helps us also make decisions on which truck we get, which platform we decide to go with. So it's great to catch up with you guys and chat with you today.
Yeah, likewise.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 25TDP40 for 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear. If you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house, they've got you covered with a complete lineup to meet any budget and different choices for blade steel, blade shape, opening mechanisms, and different handle designs. And we appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. Also wanted to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters. Tyler Loewen of 23 Diesel, CUTTERUP Rob, Robert, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube podcast apps, follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 9 of the Diesel Podcast, and I look forward to bringing you guys more of the content that you want to hear in 2025. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.